Hey guys, Matt, IronTrap Garage, and today we're going to start a big project on the sedan delivery project. So we have gotten it to the point now where we can move it around the property, which is our big goal before winter. So that way we can juggle projects as we get into winter. We just move cars in and out depending on what we're waiting for parts on, or we shoot a batch of videos, whatever. So the one big thing on this I've been dying to do since basically the day we found it, or even the first time I saw photos of it, is uncover what I think is the original black paint, or definitely old black paint that is underneath of this faded primer, whether it was gray or is black. I think it was black primer that somebody sprayed on, and it looks like they were almost like wet sanding at some point or something. Not quite sure what they were doing, but underneath the paint, it doesn't seem like it's too bad. So when we first got the car, I basically went over this corner and a couple other spots, just trying some different methods for seeing how easily the primer would come off. So I tried wiping a little bit with some acetone and some different things like that. I'm a little hesitant to use the oven cleaner trick on this one because the primer appears to be just like one coat, just one thin coat over top of what was there. So because of that, the oven cleaner is pretty darn aggressive, and while you can put it on and not leave it on as long and wipe it off, it may work. The thing that I don't like about it is it tends to attack the original paint underneath. There's like a split-second difference between it wiping off and neutralizing it and starting to attack this original paint. It'll wipe it off all the way down the primers or bare metal. So I'm going to try to avoid to do that method. When we did Beautiful, it was like you could measure with a ruler almost the paint that was brushed over top. No big deal. We were able to strip it kind of in layers, and you had a lot more room for error there. This one, what I seem to find doing this back corner is I took some like 1,000 or 1,500 grit and went over it wet, and it seemed to break through it pretty darn quickly. So what I think I'm going to do is try it with the DA sander. I did a little bit of this area here with the DA sander, hi Moon, and with 1,500 grit or 1,200 grit, I forget, and wet, just using a squirt bottle, and it knocked it through very, very quickly. So I think using that method, we could, in a delicate manner, take off all the primer and that top layer, expose the cool black paint like we like, and then we'll come back with a buffer and gently buff everything and seal up that old paint so that it stays looking good. So I got this little corner done. I have the whole car to do. It's going to be a lot of work, and we're going to get started today. Alright, so here's yesterday's progress. I worked a good portion of the day yesterday on this quarter and got basically the majority of the paint off the rear quarter. I got the rear fender at the end of the day. But there's definitely some spots that you have to go back, and once everything dries up, there's some spots that are easier to see. So right in here, a little bit of primer I didn't get to. You just got to carefully by hand sand. But when everything dried up, which is cool, what is cool that we saw, and I don't know if it's going to pick up on the camera, there's old English writing, like residue there. And what it looks like, if you look real close, it looks like somebody took a razor blade and scraped it off, and they weren't super careful. So like here, they scraped through the paint and it's all scratched at the letters. But if you look and you get the shadow just right, in here you can see there's some Old English and there's some down like right in there. So we're hoping that when we buff it, maybe they'll come up better. We're trying to figure out what it says, but because it's Old English, it's even harder to read than if it was just normal block letters or something. But that's where I'm getting to. You can see, I mean, even though it's dirty, you can see the shine. We're getting to the original black paint underneath there. So this thing's gonna come up bitchin'. Even dirty with the residue, sanding residue on it, it's looking good. So just been doing a combination of stuff on some of the bigger panels that are easy to get to. I'm taking the DA sander, I don't know where it is, but over there somewhere, Steve's got it. DA sander with like 800 grit dry is what I've been finding is good, and I knock off like the first, knock off a good majority of the primer. I don't go all the way through it, just a good portion of it, and then I go back to wet sanding with like 1000 or 1500 grit, depending on how thick it is in that area. And then you break through wet and you can kind of see the black paint show up. You can also hear it when you get through the black paint, it gets, or the primer, it gets really smooth and you can just feel it and hear it that you're down to original paint. But as typical, we're getting all these spots where it's primer spots, where I think a lot of this is, some of this is where just the paint was thin and me sanding it, you're gonna get that a little bit. But some of these random spots I think is where there was probably chips in the paint or damage or different things like that. And then with me wet sanding it, it's kind of like knocking the edges off of the flaky paint and making it look like that. And no fake patina here, just real stuff. And we're trying to make the best of what this is. So I'm gonna keep working, work on the door next. I got pretty much the whole roof done. Maybe I can go over here and show you guys. So I got pretty much the whole roof done. You can even see I went on to the top of the cowl here, and here's a good contrast of the difference. It's just a real thin coat of primer, but it's good primer, so it's on there. So, but I got the whole roof done, I got the whole quarter. I'm gonna start attacking this door. Hopefully, because it's a big area, I can use the DA sander. What gets really slow is like from here to here, all these body lines and lines, and I'm gonna have to go back by hand. There's a lot of spots that there's little pieces I missed. Not trying to go crazy, but you know, it's borderline OCD problems here, trying to, when do you stop? So I'm gonna try and keep sanding and get this side of the car done today if possible. All right, so I spent a lot of time cleaning this thing and wet sanding, and we are finally ready to push it outside and wash, do a little rinse off of all the wet sanding scum, and start doing a buff with our chemical guys, sealer and compound. So, or wax rather. So what I did off camera, probably should have filmed it, but I just wanted to get going this morning. We found at this estate where we got this, and I've been doing this for a while now, and I'm finally getting around to start using the stuff. We've been scavenging old enamel, lacquer, different old paints that we thought we might use for jobs like this. So, in the same batch of garages where the car came from, we found some old Ditzler jet black. There was also some DuPont that was the same, and then the reducer, which is also kind of like a activator too, for lack of a better term, for modern terms. But so I mixed some of that up in my little Eastwood Concourse Pro detail gun, and I sprayed mainly the rear lower panel underneath of the door. I think he properly stripped that and then sprayed it with primer. So when I was trying to sand it, it was coming out. I wasn't seeing any of the black paint. So I know with the sun here, it's hard to see, but we'll see it when we get outside. I sprayed that black, and then there was a couple spots on these fenders where it looks like the fender was banged in and somebody hammered it out and picked and filed, and then they used a really aggressive like stone grinder on it, and it just didn't look good. Here there was a split and they welded it up, so I ended up just dusting some on there. I know it looks totally different because it's actually shiny paint. My idea is that we will blend into that by when we go and buff everything around it, and I may even have to tone that down by scuffing it a little bit, not sure yet, but we'll blend it in. I did similar stuff on the DeLorean car, and now after I've been driving it for a while, you can hardly even tell where I did the work. So those are the spots. The main thing was this rear lower panel was gray, and in the door jamb here was all gray. So when you shut the door, you could see this like light gray around it, and it didn't really look good. So didn't go crazy with taping or masking, because I let this kind of melt in to the lacquer underneath of it, and I'm just gonna buff all around it, and it should kind of blend in good. But this rear fender was the same thing. There was a couple of spots that were like huge spots of just totally bare metal where it looks like they had sanded or done something. So just by putting a little bit on, it will give it a little protection, and then we'll kind of blend into it with the buffing and all that. So we have everything kind of nice and flat. The one cool thing I saw that I'll show before we push it outside, the hood has actually like a green primer underneath of it. The rest of the car, most of the car has red primer, but the hood is like a green primer, and I think the one rear quarter had gray underneath, which was a little odd. I don't really know why. The car doesn't look like it's ever been apart, but there's like these white and yellow pinstripes on every louver, and then you could see on the hood a little bit of yellow, and this door isn't a good example, but there was yellow pinstriping that most of it kind of was rubbed off or rubbed through, or when we wet sanded it came off. And yeah, there's a little bit on the doors you could see. Get out in the light, you can see, but you can see on this hood. So just kind of neat to uncover that stuff. Other thing we noticed is that, or I noticed, is that something happened here. We don't know what, but when I started wet sanding, you could see there's some sort of damage that had happened. There's even a little bit of pitting of the metal. So not sure if just how it was sitting somewhere before it was found, the first time. Maybe there's a little rust or whatever, but kind of got that. So I may dust in some paint on that. I'm not sure yet. We'll see how it comes out. But we're gonna get it outside, start making this black paint shine again. I am very excited. Leaving some of the puck up to it. Oh yeah, see it from here. Oh, the roof has so much. What? must have put like a white paint or coating on the roof.
Yeah, I saw that. I was trying to be as gentle as possible.
It would really not hit that at all.
Okay.
It's literally running right inside of the car.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Stay away from that. Yep. That roof will have to be addressed eventually. I think as soon as you start driving it, that roof's going to deteriorate.
Yeah. Yeah, once it gets exposed to some weather and shit. I didn't get down into that yet. I just did the side, the top.
Even when you wetted it,
it looks
fine.
Oh, yeah.
That's generally when you buff it. That's how it's gonna look.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it'll be an issue.
Right.
It just is drying. It could be the lacquer's real dead right there, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Great job.
Gee, thanks. Enjoy your coffee there, boss. I got this.
All right, so while Steve's washing, I'll show you guys a little bit of what we use, or what I use. We are by no means body guys or detailers, but this is just the stuff for perfectly shitty jobs that work well. So for stuff that's like heavy cutting, maybe you didn't get all the old primer off or whatever, and you want to smooth it out a little bit, Eastwood has this fast cutting compound. I use that. So there's some spots I will touch with that. I went through everything with 1,000, 1,500 grit, so it's pretty good, but I also don't want to make it perfect because we're not trying to replicate a perfect paint job. But this does work. I actually think they say to 1,000 grit or something. Yeah, right there you can see it's good for cutting to 1,000 grit. So if there's any spots maybe I missed or I wasn't as diligent, I may go over with that a little bit. I have one of their coarse polishing pads. The secret sauce that I like to use for a lot of these cars is the Chemical Guys Extreme Top Coat Sealant with Carnauba. So it's like it's a sealant and a wax all in one. It's really nice because for lazy people like me, it's kind of an all-in-one type deal. So you put it on, you put a little bit on your buffer or polisher and on your pad, and then you put it right on the surface. You buff it all in, let it sit like a wax, and you rub it off with a dry rag, microfiber, and it comes out really nice, and it lasts for a very long time. So I've been using this, my old faithful. This is a dual action sander polisher that Eastwood sells, an electric one. This is a nice, because it's like a DA style, you don't have to worry about ripping the edges off of the paint or anything, or polishing through, because this paint's really thin on these older cars. I prefer using this over using a big rotary buffer. A little different if you're painting a brand new car or a brand new paint job and you want to cut through some heavy, defects or something like that. But with this, paint's so thin, we just use this. I have a medium pad on and I have a fine one there. So I'm going to use the medium because I didn't go real crazy with the fine grit paper. So it'll polish a little bit as we put it on. So I'm going to start working on it. Steve's finishing up washing the car, and we dusted in a couple of spots. I actually went back, and this area right here on this body line you could probably see is shinier. I went back with a little bit more of that lacquer paint and sprayed that in there because we realized there was some areas that was actually burned through, or something had happened, and it was, as the more we wet sanded it, the primer was showing more. So we're going to go through and try and buff everything into that, and it hopefully should look okay. That's the goal. So I'm going to get to buffing after we dry it off and see how everything's going to come out. Can't wait. right, so just show you guys the process. Ignore these little spots because they're where the paint I dusted in, but you can see here the shine we're getting off of this old paint here. And I'm not going real crazy. I'm not trying to create a fake looking, you know, clear coated job, but you can see we get to like here. This is where I put it all on with the buffer and it's hazing up just like normal wax. And then Steve's kind of coming behind me after a few minutes and wiping it off. So I'm gonna try and get here so you can see. All right, Steve, this corner is gonna be crazy.
Yeah, this is the best paint on the car right here. Wow, look at that.
Yeah, that's the ticket. Insane.
Yeah.
And we're not even going as crazy as you could with buffing and getting every imperfection out.
Nope, that's amazing. That little bit of paint is so good.
Yeah. And it's still got some scratches and stuff in it, but
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Right.
Just want it to look better.
Wow, that looks freaking awesome.
Wow. Yeah, you can see the reflection of the Ford sign there in it. And these Eastwood lights I just got are really good for this, actually. I got them for under the lift, but for detailing they're great. So yeah, this is good. This is kind of what we're going for. A little bit of, you know, scratches, light scratches are okay. If you get too crazy, the other problem is sometimes you start burning through the paint or it gets all hazy because the primer's starting to show through. So you got to know when to stop. So using the coarse, I switched to, on Eastwood buffer, I switched to the coarse pad with the chemical guy stuff, and it actually seems to work pretty darn good. This is just aggressive enough that it's taking some of the heavy scratches out and leaving with you a pretty fine finish overall. So that's a little area. I'm gonna start working our way down on this side and try and get this whole side looking that good. I'm kind of dying to do these big panels. You know?
Yeah. Nice too.
That's all I need is your approval, Steve.
That's it, huh?
Wow.
Alright, so after a lot of work, polishing, wet sanding and polishing this thing, it was an incredible amount of work. Probably the most tedious job I've done in a long time. And we've done, generally we end up doing like one of these maybe a year. I think this is the second one this year. We did the 39 coupe as well that we brought back, and it is, I'm hoping not to do any more this year because it is a lot of work. And this one in particular, just trying to get all of the gray primer off, proved to be pretty difficult. There was areas where it was thicker than other areas, and old previous damage, and the paint's really thin. It's really inconsistent, so you had to jump around in all the methods I was using throughout to try and do as little damage as possible. Now, whenever you do this, there's no way around it. You're going to get sections where you maybe burn through a little bit, or a little more primer shows, or you uncover old damage, and we just worked around it. And like I did in the end, I went and just took some old black lacquer and sprayed it in a couple of spots that were really ugly. And knowing that I sprayed those areas, you would know that it was done. But I think overall, when you look at the car, it doesn't detract your eye too much. So that is why I ended up doing that. And also we sprayed that rear panel that was under the door that was just gray primer. By spraying that, I didn't even buff it, just left it alone. It is a nice match. And I think everything will look very natural after it gets driven and it gets more crappy. So now that we got this done, that's been bugging me for a while. Not bugging me, it's something I've wanted to do from the day I first saw photos of it. I had a feeling that the black paint was underneath of that primer. We were correct, and I'd say it turned out as good or better than I expected. Really excited about that. So now we just are going to continue to do some more functional stuff, and also do some more stuff to make it look better. So Steve's in the background, been working on a bit of wiring, so we're going to be shooting a video on doing some of the wiring. We're going to change the headlights out for some 35-36 commercial lights, which will be pretty cool. And then we're working on getting the dash and some of that stuff figured out on what we're going to do with that, the steering wheel, a bunch of those types of things that will make the thing more drivable. And now it starts, holds water. It should drive under its own power now, but we only have rear mechanical brakes, so we haven't really done much driving with it like that. But once we get a rear in it, we do the juice brakes and all that stuff. So I feel pretty confident that by spring, we should be able to take this thing out and start using it right as soon as it starts getting warm again. And who knows, maybe we'll get far enough that if we have a warm winter, we might even be able to drive it a little bit this winter. Who knows? But either way, super thankful that I'm able to have this car, resurrect it, put it back on the road, which is what we're all about, as you guys know. So thank you guys for following along. Let me know what you think of the transformation of the old black paint. Thanks, guys. Catch you later.